Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ellen. So today is Wednesday and it's kind of a wacky day. I was doing taxes today. I figured let's just do a super simple, loose, fun, house in the hill with some greens and some paints and a nice sky. Really simple. I talk about this. You're just drawing a rectangle type style Cape Cod house and then washing in color, throwing in color, splattering color to create an impressionistic looking kind of landscape. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Let me know if this is something that you love to do, you hate to do, you're frustrated. I mean, I took like a few minutes just to paint this, and that's all it took. And you don't have to make your cottage perfect. You don't have to draw every little window and every little line. You can just do something really simple and loose like this and have a great effect. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you. Also, check out my Patreon. I have ad-free videos, traceables, exclusive tutorials, and a live stream in the top tier. It's just a place people go and support my channel, which I appreciate so much. And we've added a Facebook group, and everyone's sharing all this stuff and, having a great community. So it's really great. You can check it out with the little bloop icon right there. Just click that little round icon, and you'll find the Patreon. Okay, without further ado, let's get painting. Alright, for this tutorial, let me go over my supplies. I'm using a block from Fabriano. This is their Artistico, 100% cotton cold press. I like it because it's bright white. Actually, no, this is the traditional white, I'm sorry. Traditional white, but it's a nice tooth on it. And a block is good for wet on wet. If you don't have a block, you can tape down some paper or stretch your paper. That helps. I have my palette here. I'll be playing with a flat wash brush. This is 1 inch, just some craft flat wash brush. Maybe my Princeton 12 Neptune series because it's a nice floppy head here. And I have my 12 Princeton Aqua Elite, which is nice. And I might go back in again and use my number 8 long round for some detail. Now for the house, you just draw a basic shape. I'm drawing like a basic, almost like Cape Cod style, but yours can be taller, skinnier. Look up pictures of houses around where you are in the neighborhood. Just throw a little teeny house in there. It could be a farmhouse, could be a barn, could be a little shack, whatever. It doesn't really matter. So basically, for me, the Cape Cod house is like the triangle here. Basically, it's a rectangle shape. I'll show you how to draw a Cape Cod house. And this is a side view. So then you have like the side of it and the little chimney. And then here, I've just kind of like drawn in real quickly, like where I'm going to put some bushes and some trees. And this is all going to be just really loose and kind of fun. And then the sky, you can keep it light. You can add bright colors. You can make them pink, purple, like we showed before, and the purple ones. If you want to make a nice bright sky. So I'm going to play around with that. I'm going to mix up some ultramarine blue. Just get it going here. Ultramarine blue deep I use. And all my colors are from Holbein. I love Holbein. And if you want to have a little more gray, you can add some Paynes gray. I'm loosening that up also. You can start wet on wet or wet on dry. But I'm going to do wet on dry. I'm just going to start to put in the blue. See, really just kind of loose, throwing that in. You can get it wet. I'm adding more water and pulling it down. See? I'm getting this all wet now around by the house. I'm not concerned about touching the chimney here. Boop. So I'm lifting up my pad, my block, so then the color can kind of bleed down. So I'll put that light blue going in first. But you can just go ahead and add all the water around here if you want to first. This is pretty damp. Grab some more blue. And like I said, you can add some other colors. I'm just going to keep more blues, maybe a little purple kind of tones. Grabbing that. I love ultramarine blue. You want to grab a little of this bright rose or add a little magenta, make it purple. You can add some purple in there. See, it's flowing downward because I lifted the pad, the block up. Going up here and adding some of that blue purple and kind of coming down in here. Just really going fast and loose. Don't overthink it too much, people. You really get stuck when you do that. So I have like a little wash of purple in here. If I want to make the sky a little bit darker, a little more purple. I'll go up in here. And so notice how I'm kind of going on an angle. And then it can kind of bleed down. You can go grab some more paint. That's a really bright blue. Just getting that color in here. And it's kind of playing. You can kind of play a little bit, like lifting it, manipulating a little bit. If you want to move some paint, you want to add a little gray to that. Get some dark tones in there, ominous tones. But I like it like bright bluish color tones. And a little purple. Play around with your sky. This is just supposed to be fun. You're not supposed to be stressed out about it. Now to me, like right now, it seems like I have a lot of color. If you want to remove some of it, just kind of lift. Take your brush, kind of lift it and tap it back on a towel. You can do it with the flat wash brush or the floppy brush. So I'm kind of removing some of the paint. I'm doing this fairly quickly, just to get the perfect sky that I want. You can do that for clouds too. If you want to remove it for clouds, kind of twist it and remove it like this. And once you're done with that sky, don't fuss with it anymore. Removing some paint. And you don't even have to put a sky in. Mine's gonna go crazy right now. It was looking a little too gray. I want to go back and look a little more blue. Bright blue. And then I'm going to stop because I make myself crazy. It can happen to everybody. A little bit more blue here because I'll mess it up. Okay. Once I finish my sky, which I feel like it's the kind of the colors I wanted, it may not be perfect, but I'm missing some of the color up in here on the edges. Get a little more of that blue. Like I said, I'm kind of going in curving motion, going downward, tapping, and then holding the paper up so it can kind of bleed down a little bit too. All right, I'm done. It's going to dry lighter than it looks, so that's fine with me. So now we're going to start to play with some greens, all this kind of stuff. The house I want to kind of keep white. We can play with colors in the ground, all that fun stuff. Grabbing some more paper towel. Mixing greens. Oh, I use peacock, I use Prussian. I use a bunch of different colors. Got my number 12 Neptune series. So here's the Prussian blue. Ooh, that's a lot of pigment. Took a lot of pigment off my brush there. It grabbed a lot. That's okay. I'm gonna grab a little yellow. And you have a nice deep bluish green. I was tapping a little for umber, and you get a little bit darker green without being so blue. Just personal preference. You can take that same green, put some over here, and add some yellow to it and makes it lighter. See, like a chartreuse green. Or you can use your peacock blue. Makes a bright medium green. Look how pretty that is. Again, if you want to make it a little bit duller, you add some brown or some red. So I'm mixing a bunch of greens now. You want a fair amount of paint, by the way. And now we're just going to have fun just putting color around. And maybe some bluish gray colors too in the background. So we've got the Paynes gray with some burnt blue. Excuse me, Paynes gray with some ultramarine blue. Losing it. It happens sometimes. This is still very damp. I might have little blooms in here, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to paint over that. Cleaning up my brush. I am just going to smooth this kind of paint area over here where it's creating a little bloom. And if it messes up, I could just paint over with some greens. So we're going to start to play with painting greens in here. Just kind of like tap it in. Here, this floppy brush does a really good job just putting in some nice greens. Going around by the house. Just moving it around like this. You see how I'm moving it around pretty fast? Grab. You need to have a lot of paint, by the way, mixed up. I didn't make enough, so I'm going to make more. Just going like that. Grabbing some more water. Want to keep a nice spring kind of meadow. The house is sitting on this hill, kind of like a hill situation. Just tapping in some nice loose color. You can get really loose with the color if you want. Have a little fun. I'm adding in some of that deeper green, blue greens. Yep. Tapping it up over in here. It's bleeding down there. This is where you get to have fun when it's still wet in here and you're kind of playing and adding the color. See, a little bit darker in some areas. That's maybe a little too dark, but listen, you can just play with it. I'm gonna grab some more of this bright green. I'm just gonna manipulate it by just tapping again, the tippy taps. I love my tippy taps. See, it's a little dark. Go back in and add some bright medium green. It doesn't have to be perfect. See, I'm doing these taps on the wet areas here. It just looks like the house is kind of like floating in the sea of land and bushes. Now I'm going like this, so like maybe the landmass is kind of flat in some areas. Grabbing some burnt umber, getting a little darker. You can grab some gray, Paynes gray, water that down. Just have to play with adding some grays and browns in the ground. Don't make it all perfectly green. Not as interesting. And just going like this, you see some dry brushing happening over here. But you want some variety in your little mass of land here. And I'm just making this up. I drew a little simple house, put a simple sky, and I'm just playing with color and all that good stuff. Just some trees in the background here, then a kind of grayish blue. It's still kind of damp, so I'm just kind of tapping it. This brush has a really good point. You can kind of lift, go like that, make some funky trees. Look, watch, I'll show you. I know I get excited. Take the tip of the Neptune brush, doop, 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 and then tap on the top. See, they look like little, that was all just going like this. It was still wet and damp here. These ones are really wet, so it's gonna do that burst and bleed a little more than if it didn't have the water that was here. See? Can add some greens to that. Tippy tap, kind of go down. You play with the watercolor. It's all about play and having fun. Adding a little more pigment in here. Didn't take much to do that though, did it? You can play around with adding some over here. And this one is drier. So here you really have to kind of manipulate it. Maybe just do some round circle kind of situation, and then some lines down. So it kind of matches the other ones. But don't fret. Just see, I'm mixing all my colors. I'm just having fun. Tippy tap. I love the tippy tap. A little bit thicker paint, which means it's less water. It's not going to move as much in that area that is wet. A little thicker paint. The darker blue. Something like this. Again, it won't move as much. It will kind of sit there and kind of bleed a little bit. And get some nice varieties of these colors. Isn't that sweet? It dried there. What happens when it dries? You either go back in with water or some green. Going adding some light green. Can add some nice browns. Going across like a little field going across this way. And you can even add color. And you don't have to paint the whole entire piece of paper. So I'm going back and adding some more bright green, just kind of tapping it around. Very, very wet. Ooh, yeah. Get some browns in there. Variety is the spice of life. I'm just tapping in some browns on top of those greens that I did. Again, mixing things up. Adding in some color over here. Bright color. Another trick you can do is do some washing downward. So I'm going to take my flat wash brush, maybe grab some of this color and just kind of wash like this. Kind of like that whole thing where I like to erase things. See how pretty that is when you go like that? And you can add some of the color here. Doesn't that look cool? Not everybody likes that kind of stuff, but I do. I don't want to paint the whole paper, but I do want to have some expression. Just really simple. I'm throwing in little bits and pieces of color. Here it all dried up. So you might have to get it a little bit wet again. Adding in some more greens. If it dried up. I'm adding that medium kind of green color in there. I'm keeping the house more in the white gray tones. I'm playing around with adding this lush green field, like it's stuck under there. It's up on a hill and you can't see it. When you feel satisfied that you've done your green part, you can stop and then we can start working on the house. I'm going to tap in some darker tones. Going back here. And it's still wet, so it's bleeding nicely for me. You can have one area that's pretty dark, and I'll show you why. Oh, it's always good to have a little white gouache close by. You know what I'm going to do, right? Getting some browns in here. Putting some out here. At this point, you can play around with different things. It's super, super wet, so you can't do this scraping. It's going to go right back into it with a credit card. But you can scrape some of it. See, look at that. This little area right here. It's a little grass mound. It's bleeding, but then you go like this, and you've created some nice, really cool grasses. But if you have some white gouache, which I do close by, well, it was close by. Here it is. We can water this down and kind of splatter it with where the dark greens are. Grab whatever brush you have that's convenient. A smaller brush is going to give smaller splatters. Loose this up. And boom. It will start to splatter and spread out, create this really kind of cool texture. And then it looks like little daisies in the field. Isn't that kind of fun? You really see it over the dark areas more than the lighter areas. Daisies, and it might dry where it's just you don't even see it at all, and you have to go back in and maybe splatter it again. And you can take some dark green grasses or browns. Mixing up some of my color here. On the number 8, this is an even smaller brush. Do some nice little grasses kind of going up. Now it's still very damp, but I'm just showing you. You see moving this paint. Get some nice pretty grasses. Grab some Paynes gray. You play around with that, the grasses. I have a few videos in here with that. And if you want to put color in, you can always put color in. You can start to play with some pinks. Also, it doesn't have to be all white. I have this wonderful color over here. Bright rose. I'll grab my 8 long round. Now you want to use less water so it splatters nicely. Pretty little pinks. Try not to get your house. You might have to cover it. Isn't that pretty? Okay, so I'm going to let this dry and we're going to start to paint the house. Once that's dry, we can start to play with the house. I'm going to be using Paynes gray. I'm going to keep the house mostly white. The roof will be gray. And we're just going to loosely paint this. We're not going to go crazy painting like every little detail. Just going to put the roof on. See, I'm using a number 8 long round. I'm just going really quickly. Just throwing in the color. And And then the edge of this pretty little house. You don't have to get really tight on this area. The windows, it's going to loosely fit in, you know, like draw in the windows with the brush. I'm just going really loose, and then put in the little window panes, fill them in. Because it's just a loose style home, I don't really care so much if it's perfect or not with the windows and the door and the edge here. You can have some color kind of hitting that. I might water down some of my green, mixing with the gray. And I can use this kind of on the roof and a little bit under here. If you want to put in some siding, go right ahead, but it needs to look a little rustic. It looks too white, so you want to add some tones to it. So we have grays, we have some burnt umber, we have some greens. We'll start to play around with adding the colors in. The door can be brown, or it can be like a green or white. Make a nice rustic brown door. Leave a little window. See how loose I'm painting this? It's like not perfect. Rustic. And I'll water this color down. And I'll kind of throw it in on the bottom here. Here as well. Especially where it kind of meets the bushes. Just filling that in. If you want to get a little dark on the roof. Oop, I got green on there. You can get a little bit darker. See how loose I'm just sticking that in there? Same thing with the chimney. It could be gray, it could be red. I'm going to do a gray chimney. Oops. Just really simple. And again, over here, gonna get a little darker with some grays down towards the bushes and the side of the house. Now, if you want the sun to come this way, obviously this side's gonna be a little bit darker. So I'm gonna add even more color right on the side of the house. So the sun's coming, you can see it like it's on this side. I'm envisioning that. I don't really have a reference. I'm just kind of playing with like shapes that I've painted before many times. Just having fun. And this little rustic house, right? It took 0 time to do that. And then you can go back in here if you want to and add more depth once it's dry. I kind of like the loose blooms. Some super grasses kind of going like this. With this way and that way. I lost some of my stems on some of these. I'll go back in and add them. Give it that like, it's like overgrown, house on the hill kind of look. That's all I was going for. Just something kind of cute and quaint. Right? Feels like it's spring is happening. And go back and add a little more greenery in here. It kind of got washed away. I splattered a lot. Actually, some of my splatter got up in here. You want to cover this part. Don't do what I did. But you know, you understand that. I'm just kind of playing with the color. It's just having fun. See? So I'm keeping this more brighter and lighter. Getting a little bit darker back here. You can go over the colors once you finish them. And if you want to add some other bright colors, some pretty purples, mix that pink with the blue, ultramarine blue, and you get a nice purple. Or even ultramarine blue itself. I also have this lovely color, lilac from Holbein. You can put some of that in there. See, this is a deep purple. Play around with that. You can take the colors right out of the tube, which I've done many times. Verdier blue and this one. And just go right in here. And it becomes like an impressionistic looking painting. I love to create things like this. And it's watercolor, although it feels like gouache when you do this. Right? These really pretty purple blooms. Add more white. You want it to feel kind of like an impressionistic looking painting, kind of like a little rustic cottage. Just tap in the color. Tippy taps. That's all I'm doing. Tippy taps. Here's the ultramarine blue. You can do that. Play around with the blue. Have fun with it. Can make me mostly greens. Gonna add a little more bright green in here. Woo! A couple more colors. And that's really it. If you want to get a little more detail with the door or the windows, go ahead. I might just add just a little bit, like the black window part here on the door, but I really wanted to keep it simple. You can make yourself crazy putting in like all the little siding, you know, little marks. Just doing quick little brush work here. And that's that. That is all she wrote on this little house in the hill here. Keeping it simple. That's super beginner. Washing in the color, throwing in the color, tapping in the color, splattering the color, moving around the color, going back over it after you finished letting it dry and adding a little more color for depth. And then you can go and take color right from the tube. You saw that the purple. Just add some more fun to it. Take this purple, put it up here. I just do little taps. And that's all you need. You want to add nice little impressionistic looking flowers on your field. And there's a house in the field, a rustic house. It looks like it's fallen down, doesn't it? I like it when it's loose and rustic like this. I don't necessarily think it's important to have perfect looking homes when you're doing something really kind of fun and goofy and simple like this. See, I'm kind of going back in and just adding the siding and fixing it up just a tad. There she is. So super simple house, country house, you know, washing in color, pouring color, very impressionistic style, splattering the paint up in here, playing around, everything in the kitchen sink today. Just thought I had a little fun. You know, it gets monotonous sometimes for everybody, and it's just kind of fun just to play with color and paint and simple shape. This is a rectangle, triangle with a rectangle. I guess they call them trapezoids when they go like that on the side. So have fun with it, play with it. If it's damp, you can try and take a credit card and scrape it, do all that fun stuff, and yeah, play around. So I hope this was fun. I hope you have a great day. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.